Welcome, boys and girls, scholars and laymen, to the wonderful, entertaining, agitating edition of We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century. I'm your host for this empowerment segment, Brother Ron, also known as R2, C2, the Artivist. I thought I told you that we all be in it to win it, and we all be don't stop. Don't stop till you get enough, and then some. Well, you can have your fill, but don't take too much, right? God bless a child who got his own. So thank y'all for tuning in on this Sabbath, on this Saturday night. And I ain't got nobody, but I got you all to keep me company. So we're going to have a great show tonight. It's on my mind. We're going to do a special tribute to a true soldier of justice and love, the late great Alvin Sykes, brother Alvin Sykes, a brother who should be a household name. If Black lives really matter, he should be a household name in Black homes. He passed away, but did he leave? Oh boy, he did not go quietly into the night. He did not make a quiet, righteous, ancestral return. I didn't know the brother passed on, became a righteous ancestor until a couple of days ago when I went to wish the beautiful Queen Lioness Crown, A.L.L, Fly Nubian Queens, a belated happy life affirmation day. And I saw she made a mention of our dear brother Alvin Sykes passing, and provided, said instead of donating to her on her birthday, giving her birthday gifts through Cash App, send it to him to take care of his homegoing expenses. So, I was really shocked. It's been a minute since I talked to Alvin. I wasn't that close to Alvin like that. But the man was a unique individual. And it just shocked me. I have lost so many people over the last several years, pre-COVID, whatever. But just losing people and time go marching on, not taking the time to really necessarily grieve the way I wanted to. But it is time for us to honor our heroes and sheroes. I'm tired of people telling me who we should respect, who we should love, who we should honor. And it's on new Black media to honor our fallen. I'm tired of us complaining about when the mainstream fake news media do not pay our greats the proper tribute. And when they do pay them any mind, they always got to spin it in some negativity, always on some low vibrancy, low frequency type of thing. So here on We All Be, we're going to pay. We're not going to only study the greats. We're going to pay homage to the greats. And we want you all to be great, to be the best version of you. So this is for brother Alvin Sykes. We're going to pay him the proper respect. I'm going to give you my thoughts on him. I'm going to share things people have written about him. The guy was well respected enough by the white folks, by the good white folks. He made some good trouble. That they even gave him a New York Times obituary. So that's pretty cool. That the New York Times, because y'all know it's only important when white folks tell y'all it's important, right? Black people, it's only important when white folks acknowledge us with their accolades, their words, their gestures, their desserts and stuff. It doesn't make a difference that Brother Ron would take the time out on Saturday, on this Sabbath, on the true Sabbath, to honor a true spiritual being like no other. We lost DMX yesterday, and what made DMX different for so many other people is that he wore his spirituality on his sleeve. And this brother Alvin was no exception. He wasn't as loud as DMX, but his actions were very loud, and he was very spiritual. He was a Buddhist. He really was a unique individual. He took a vow of poverty. So he, but his spirit was not broken. He had a rich spirit. He believed in providing the best service of humanity to humanity with his talents and stuff. So he dedicated his 64 years of living to giving the best of himself to the people. And his legacy, he has no biological children, but his legacy shall be a living one, because the people he helped along the way, the people he inspired, and even the generations not yet born who will be motivated and inspired by his amazing legacy. And we're going to do our best at We All Be to amplify that said legacy. And like starting tonight. So who is Alvin Sykes? But before I get too far into that, because I'm going to keep this about two hours tonight. You know, like I said, I'm not the supreme oracle. I'm human. I make errors. I mispronounce names. I get stuff wrong. But it's not my intent to be a disinfo agent or to misdirect or distract or misguide people. So I want to do some house cleaning right quick. I know I talked about Chokwe Lumumba. I went to his funeral, right? Chokwe Lumumba was a revolutionary lawyer. They say he was the most revolutionary mayor in the country. He was mayor of Jackson, Mississippi. Like I said, Jackson, Tennessee last night. I meant Jackson, Mississippi. I'm freestyling. Like I don't have no script in front of me. I'm just talking to you all. When I talk, sometimes I get, I get emotional. When I talk real fast, I do all the stuff that human beings do. So it was Jackson, Mississippi. It wasn't Jackson, Tennessee. I'll tell that story about the modern day runaway slave. I met him. I wish I had recorded him at that event. It's amazing. And what else? Yeah, I said on Jay Arendale's show, the Queen Lioness Crown, and I said it the other night. I said it probably a couple of nights in a row on my podcast that I first noticed or became aware of the existence of Brother Alvin Sykes on A&E's American Justice with Bill Curtis. That was one of my favorite shows back in the day, but actually it was like my other favorite show on A&E, City Confidential. That episode aired that featured Brother Alvin Sykes pursuing justice for his friend, the late great Kansas City musician known as Steve Harvey. Not the comedian. I guess this one's the more talented one, and we just lost them all too soon. But it was on City Confidential, season 5, episode 10 of season 5, but episode 64 overall in the series. So my bad, people. I didn't mean to, mislead, but I actually look back on some social media posts I did several years ago when I honored him. I had that in my mind for some reason. I kept on thinking it was Bill Curtis, American Justice on A&E, but actually was City Confidential. I don't know why I was thinking that. And Brother Alvin, very, good brother. He never thought to correct me on that, but he did correct me on the interview I'm going to share in this tribute show for him. He did correct me that it was City Confidential. So, human mistakes, human errors. I make mistakes, and not Brother Ron, he got it all wrong. He can't trust Brother Ron because but even the papers, even the media, they come back and say correction, Like I was talking about Lester Young's brother yesterday. I read the New York Times obit where they actually named the wrong wife. Now they named his first wife or previous wife as his widow, but actually they corrected it in a later editions, So I mean, things happen, and we're human. So that's why I tell people all the time, do your due diligence. My job is just to get you interested in being motivated in finding out for yourself. You got to teach yourself this stuff. Self-education, knowledge of self is best learned by pursuing said knowledge, by seeking truth, by seeking answers. That's how you learn. That's how you know that you got some intelligence. So to have some intellectual curiosity. So I think that's about it. But, I heard that there was a rumor that DMX, allegedly that Beyonce and Jay-Z are trying to buy DMX masters for about $10 million. I don't know if y'all heard it. It's been out because you don't know what to trust. I heard it through the E-Vine. I heard it through the E-Vine. I mean, or the internet, whatever. But they said allegedly, according to some article that I read recently, or today actually, that DMX masters are in talks of being bought or brought by Beyonce and Jay-Z for $10 million. Their plan is to give the masters or have the masters for DMX's children. Now, I read he had like 15 children, but this source say he got 17 children. So that's interesting. He was very fruitful and multiplied. He was very fruitful and multiplied. Got him a litter of pups. You gotta be taken care of. So I mean, that's cool. If that's true, that's cool. And like I said, Jay-Z is one of my favorite rappers of all time. I got him at number 2, a solid number 2. And I got DMX at number 9 with Big Daddy Kane. Because DMX to me, I mean, I look at Jay-Z. Jay-Z is like the Michael Corleone of the game. You know, he's really slick, moving, doing his thing. He's willing to sacrifice his brothers for the glory and the fame and the fortune and all that stuff. DMX was just, you know, when I look at DMX, I think of DMX kind of like he's what to hip hop and rap. What Bernie Mac is the comedy. What Highland Wolf is to the blues. And what John Coltrane is the jazz, because his spirituality is amazing. It reminds me of John Coltrane. John Coltrane had his struggles, because people forget, you know, John Coltrane was a junkie, man, for a long time. And then he cleared it. He cleaned himself up. You know, he had a premonition on epiphany around the age of 30. And he dedicated the last 10 years of his life to pursuing excellence and truth and spirituality, because John Coltrane only lived to be 40 years young. You know, DMX died young, but Coltrane died young too. But Coltrane, that last decade of his life, that's his real legacy. And so Coltrane went through the fire. Sometimes you got to go through stuff to have something to say. How can you tell a story if you've never been through anything? And DMX was a phenomenal storyteller. So I don't look at his life as a tragedy. First of all, he got 17 children. He got living legacy. He continued the bloodline. You don't know what them kids gonna end up doing. You don't know what their kids gonna end up doing. You don't know what his grandkids gonna end up. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't know. He left an amazing, just creative legacy. He used his pain to heal. He was a healer for a lot of people. You know, people talk about XXXTentacion and all these other rappers. I mean, especially Triple X Tentacion. I didn't hear about that brother until he died. You know, but you know how he was speaking for the youth, kind of like Kurt Cobain. I mean, but DMX and Tupac, man. I love both of them guys. They both left too soon. Tupac left at 25 and DMX left at 50, which is interesting. You know, but these guys, man, I love DMX. I always had, it's not no bandwagon thing with me. I just had appreciation for Dark Man X. And he really illustrates the point that if you want to make a lasting contribution, you got to be yourself. You got to be real. You got to be warts and all. You got to own it. You got to own the darkness. You got to own it all. So let me get on to honoring my friend. But I just want to clear that up. I think I made some other mistakes. But, you know, I don't script this stuff out, folks. Everything's kind of like my life is performance art. So I get in the moment, might speak too fast, mind be racing, all that stuff. So, yeah, I just want to make sure I clear that up. And we'll get to honor my friend. Hey, Sister Sheila, Montreal, thank you for tuning in. Lighten family. Antoine, thank you so much. Brother Bug, Trooper. Sweet Cheeks, Kermit, Alexander, Green. Oh, yeah, well, you know, this is it's fun you mentioned Roshan, Roland, Kurt, because man, he was like a DMX. He was a beast in terms of being a multi-instrumentalist. It's like he's a cross between DMX and Grover Washington. You remember Grover Washington, man? He died after he taped one of the morning shows, right? Playing his heart out. And he died, right? I mean, that was back, what, 99? Was that December 99 when Grover Washington died? But I think about Rashawn Roland Kirk. He died on stage. That brother was very passionate. And people, man, it's like a documentary that was on Amazon Prime about Rashawn Roland Kirk, man. And he was very passionate. He believed that black folks were special people. He wanted America and the world to acknowledge black music as classical art. He wanted, I mean, he did something with like Charles Mingus and some other great jazz musician on TV show. It was a very popular TV show at the time. I forgot, but it was featured in the documentary about Rashawn Roland Kirk. And he wanted to let people know that black people genius is a world treasure. And it should be respected as such. That black music, in particular, the jazz expression, should be respected as America's classical music. He was very passionate about it. He actually died on stage, or he died, no, he had a heart attack or something. I guess he died either at the hospital, but he died doing what he loved to do. It's kind of like a form of revolutionary suicide. I mean, he was so dedicated and focused on his art. There has never been another person like Rashawn Roland Kirk. And I would say in the history of music. And also he was blind, but he could see better in terms of his third eye. You know, sometimes when you are in a deficit in certain areas of your health, it gets compensated in other areas. Like, like they say by Stevie Wonder, he could tell the difference between a nickel and a dime and a quarter. Just by the sounds, because his hearing has been heightened. And you look at somebody like Ray Charles, who actually could fly his airplane. And I taught the musicians like the great Calvin Newborn, who was the brother of the great finest Newborn, one of the greatest piano players to ever touch this planet. Finest Newborn. But his brother was Calvin Newborn, who was a great guitarist and singer. A lot of people say he was the inspiration for Elvis Presley, because Elvis Presley used to go to places like the Plantation Inn over in Arkansas to listen to Calvin Newborn or Bill Street. And Elvis, was interested by Elvis. Elvis did not make himself king of rock and roll. The white establishment said he was king of rock and roll. But Elvis knew who the real kings and gods were. I mean, he was like a puppy dog around Ike Turner, from my understanding. He used to hang around East Trigg Avenue Baptist Church in South Memphis to hear Dr. William Brewster and his choir sing, on Sunday nights. Him and his best buddy, I think his name George Klein, who just passed away not too long ago. He was a media personality and won a part of Elvis's Memphis Mafia gang. But they used to go to Dr. William Brewster's church and listen to them perform. And Dr. William Brewster wrote the song "Move On Up a Little Higher" that Mahalia Jackson made a multi-million seller. Yeah, I know that song "Union Gospel," "Move On Up a Little Higher." But that's Dr. William H. Brewster, who was Elvis's favorite minister, a black man. And his church still exists. The actual building where he was the minister is no longer East Trigg. They got a new church next to the old church, but it is a historic landmark, or should be, because there's another church that's renting out that facility, the old East Trigg Baptist Church, or East Trigg Avenue Church. I don't know if it's Baptist now. People get out and run. I don't think it was a Baptist. Okay, I don't know. It was a black church. Okay, but that's just a little bit. But yeah, Rashawn Roller Kurt is a G, man, and y'all should check his music out. It's done at the highest level. He could play several saxophones at once and stuff like that. He was amazing. You welcome. I mean, like I said, I do things out for freestyle, man. I don't know. I got a title in the video, and then we started talking about other stuff. But I thank y'all for having the patience with me and the gift to receive. And if what I do benefits you all, I'm glad, because that's why I do it. Like I was telling some people earlier, I'm trying to build up my having the patience with me, my troll immunity. Like, they talking about the herd immunity with this stuff going on. I'm trying to build up my troll immunity, because a lot of us, I don't believe in censorship. I believe in freedom of expression. Freedom of expression, and it's still my choice to respond to negativity. It's still my free will to either respond to it or ignore it. But my thing is, I got to keep my eyes on the prize and know there's a bigger play at stake. So I want to thank you all who have taken the time to support the work that I'm doing, the God work that I'm doing. So I'm gonna feed y'all, because Dick Gregory said I'm the feeder, so I'm gonna have to feed my people. Even when I don't feel like it, I'm gonna feed y'all. So let's get on with Let me get on with the beginning. Fine. Okay. And this is We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century. This brother right here. Now I'm standing next to it. This the brother, this the man of the moment for me. A lot of us don't know who this cat is, but he's a very important cat. He loved our people. He was a brilliant brother, one of the finest legal minds in the whole country. And this brother was an 8th grade dropout, was a victim of sexual molestation and sexual trauma growing up. He was molested by his neighbors several times. He was a product of a rape. His mom was 14 when she had him, and his father raped his mom. His father raped his mom, and yet the mom still had this baby boy. She had him at 14, and he had all type of mental issues, health issues, in and out the hospital, foster home, all that stuff. And yet, like Tupac said, he's that rose that grew from concrete. and you look at the beautiful life he led, and he led a life dedicated to service. And he was a Buddhist. He was a practicing Buddhist. And he took a vow of poverty. He was poor. But he always found a way to go across the country to Washington, D.C., to talk to some of the most powerful people in the country. He was able to bend their ear and make them offers they could not refuse. He was such a charming guy. His name is Brother Alvin Sykes. And this is back in August of 2014. I went to Kansas City to present him with a Lifetime Achievement Award from the WeAllBeTV News, Radio, TV organization for all the amazing work he done in ensuring that Black folks can get justice through the legal system. He's really the true architect of the Emmett Till bill, which helped provide money to fund the reopening of civil rights cold cases like Emmett Till. This guy was the one who got the government to look back into the Emmett Till case. A high school dropout or 8th grade dropout who never learned how to drive, didn't have a driver's license, had no dollar to his name. But his office was the libraries of Kansas City. The man would spend hours and hours in the library. Like I said on Sister Jade's show, he was kind of like a famous high school dropout from Kansas City, Charlie Yardbird Parker, who would spend like hours and hours practicing the saxophone for 4 to 5 years. Charlie Parker said he practiced on his saxophone for about 11 to 15 hours a day for 4 to 5 years. Brother Alvin he didn't get a high school diploma, but his university was the libraries of Kansas City, where he would spend hours and hours reading, researching everything. This guy could have been a Supreme Court justice. The man had a brilliant legal mind, and was this dude, not Harvard Law School, not the Innocence Project, nobody. It was this cat with basically a bus card to his name. They got the government to reopen civil rights cold cases. Who got the government to exhume the body of Emmett Till and look into pressing charges into the folks who got away with his murder. So let me read this. When we met in Kansas City, I gave him his award. That's his Lifetime Achievement Award. we're not the Grammys. We're not the MacArthur. Man, if anybody deserved a MacArthur Genius Grant, it should have been him. See, we don't honor the right people, man. We do not honor our real heroes and sheroes. And that's why I'm impassioned. I get so passionate about this work. I'm saying impassioned. I don't know if there's a word, but let me read. This is from August 29th, 2014. I met him in Black August, okay? So this August 28th and August 31st. And mind you, this is the same summer of Mike Brown. I actually went to Kansas City. I was coming from St. Louis. I was covering the Ferguson uprising. So you go WeAllBeTV. I think I got a playlist of some of the things I covered in Ferguson. I was there when the Black Lives Matter grassroots movement was co-opted or taken over, like corporate, hostile corporate takeover style by Black Lives Matter LLC. The one that were one of the founders was able to buy like $1 million home in a neighborhood with less than 2% Black people. That Black Lives Matter LLC. Okay. This August 28th, this is from 2014. This is from dated August 29th, 2014, my social media post. This August 28th and August 31st marked the 59th anniversary of the kidnapping, torture, murder, and the recovery of the body of Emmett Lewis Till. This past Saturday, I finally had the pleasure and honor of meeting the incomparable Brother Alvin Sykes, the brother who was the real architect of the Emmett Till bill, which allowed and gave the Department of Justice, including the FBI, the resources and legal fortitude to pursue civil rights cold case murders. This man is a true justice crusader with one of arguably the best legal minds in the country. However, he's not a superhero, and nor does he possess a law degree or JD, let alone a GED. His offices are the Kansas City libraries, respectively. A U.S. senator once called him poor as a church mouse, but to me, he has a heart made of gold. and yet he has the ears and direct phone lines of many considered Washington, D.C.'s elite class who resides in the nation's halls or corridors of power. And by the way, they actually do return his phone calls, which is a testament to the man, his track record, and influence. I first became aware of this humble and extraordinary human being when I was watching City Confidential with Paul Winfield almost 14 years ago on A&E. It was season 5, episode 10, episode 64 overall in the series, entitled The Final Curtain. I was impressed by how brother Alvin Sykes, as a young man, was able to solve the murder of his good friend, budding Kansas City music great Steve Harvey, by a suspect white supremacist. His innovative work helped to put the man responsible for his death behind bars for a long time. A dedicated Buddhist who is a devoted music fan and promoter, as well as close lifelong friends with fellow Buddhists, and jazz great Herbie Hancock, Brother Sykes' story was made for the big screen and should also serve as an inspiration for many who dare to be great by serving and wanting to do the right thing. So it was my humble pleasure to not only treat this humble unsung giant to lunch, but to also award him the 2014 WeAllBeTV Artivist Lifetime Achievement Award, which reads, presented to brother Alvin Sykes for using his creative genius and exceptional dedicated service to the upliftment and empowerment of humanity. So yeah, so that was amazing. I can't believe that this August, that would be what, 7 years ago, when I met this extraordinary man. And like, he was very charming, man. I could see why those power brokers took a liking to brother Alvin. He's a great charmer, been a hell of a trial lawyer. He would have gave Ben Crump definitely a run for his money. See, this the cat that should have been. See, what y'all think of Ben Crump is really what Alvin Sykes was. He was that advocate for the people, man. That man got the job done. Like I said, he didn't have a shoestring budget. He couldn't afford the shoestrings, let alone the shoes. This man was poor, took a vow of poverty, but very spiritual. He vibrated on a very high frequency. And I saw it in person. I bear witness to that. So I'm still trying to process his loss. I see Sister Mimi up in here. Yeah, Elvis was close to Jack. I mean, Elvis knew who the greats were. You know, Elvis was none of, I mean, I think people got this weird, it's a weird thing about Elvis. It's kind of like an enigma for a lot of people. He's a lot of things, a lot of different people. But Elvis was friends with a lot of the black musicians. He was good, good friends with Sam Cooke, a lot of the greats. You know what I'm saying? He studied, like I said, Elvis had a thing for black women. I interviewed a guy who claimed that Elvis had a mixed daughter. His brother I interviewed in South Carolina. It's on WeAllBeTV. But Elvis knew who were the greats, There's a lot of them I can't think of right now. But I know a guy named Preston Lauterbach. He wrote a book about the Chitlin Circuit. He talked about some of the guys who came before Elvis that should have really been big, or if not as big, as big, if not bigger than Elvis, but because they wasn't the right skin tone, It is what it is. Okay, that was a steal. You got that for Coltrane. I received that star, Ashley, and we love you madly. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yes, but of course, my dear. Thank you, Miss Mimi. I mean, Elvis, he's considered white. I got a thing. This is why I say Elvis was a racist because he's white, not because he hate black people. My thing about racism, my take on racism is different from a lot of other folks' take on racism. Racism is a system about power and privilege. It's not about hating people, because whoever in power, they get to decide who has access or not. who has the privilege or not. And black people, we're not empowered, so we can't be racist. Now, we could be white supremacists. You know, white supremacy is a belief. It's like is a religion. Religions are based on beliefs. And it's a belief that white people are superior, so-called white people are superior. You understand? So a lot of races are not white supremacists. Now, Elvis was a racist because he was privileged, right? Because the establishment said he's going to be king of rock and roll. They crowned him king of rock and roll. You look at somebody like Michael Jackson, like the rose that grew out of concrete. He made himself king of pop. They didn't want Michael Jackson. Like, they don't even want to show music videos of black artists on MTV. You know, Michael Jackson basically created the music video. And he was a Virgo, so he was with it. You know, he was driven. But at the same time, they gonna give you the tools to destroy yourself too. And Michael, I mean, to get to that height where he was at, you know, you can't help but be compromised. If you look at DMX, they didn't want to sign DMX. DMX was too real. He was too authentic. You know, Puffy didn't want him. They were scared. You know what I'm saying? That's why he's gonna be forever, you know, a legend. He's one of the highest selling rap artists of all time. You know, it's funny how that works. It's about spirituality. You can't fake spirituality. You either have it or you don't. And that makes you authentic. And it comes out in your expression. You know, like you think about Van Gogh with Starry Night, or you think about Tupac. That's why no matter what they do to Pac, he's still gonna rise from the ashes like a phoenix, excuse me. Same thing with Dogman X. I'll try to keep it to 2 hours. We just like 33 minutes in, just about. I don't know what the hell we going on. I be like, I feel like I don't want to do these things, and I do them, and then like time just fly. But I also want to read the New York Times article, the obituary for brother Alvin. It's worth reading as well. I'm gonna read that because, like I said, you know, Ida B. Wells didn't even get a New York Times obituary when she died back in March 25th, 1931. There was no obituary done for this trailblazer and this pioneer. But yet, you know, not that long ago, New York Times was doing something where they was, you know, trying to right the wrongs of history. So they did an obituary for her several years ago. I think it was the same year when she won the Pulitzer, if not mistaken, posthumously. You know, what's sad is the stuff that Ida B. Wells wrote about the plight of black folks should not be relevant in 2021, but it is. And it's like worse, it seems. But that's another show. But yeah, I mean, Tupac is bigger than rap. It's like, you know, he's like one of them guys. It's kind of like Tupac is so iconic, it's bigger than just rap. He represents so much more. I had a chance to interview Idi Amin, one of the outlaws, some years ago. And he was talking about how, you know, they go around the world. They got statues and murals of Tupac. I mean, people, he's like a messianic, messiah-like figure. You know, so that's another story. Yeah, his death is funny. Then the day he died, you know, April the 9th, the official day, you know, he was already brain dead and all that stuff. But the day they decided to pull the plug on April 9th, you know, April 9th is also the birthday of Lil Nas X and also of Paul Robeson. That's a powerful number 9 in numerology. That's the number of endings and beginnings. My life path number is number 9. If you break down the day yesterday, it adds up to the number 9. So it's interesting. It's an interesting world. But let me read the New York Times article or obituary for brother Alvin. He was a beautiful brother, man. Also, he was one of the founding members of the National Black United Front, the Kansas City chapter as well, too. So the guy was very much, you know, involved in the community, but he, like Tommy, he didn't have a job, but his job was serving our people. Like, you know, people don't think that work is serious. Like, that's real work. You know, when you would do a job and you don't worry about how you're gonna be compensated, and how you gonna be taken care of, and you just do it, and God will find a way to honor you. Like I tell people all the time, the ancestors, they speak to me and they said, Brother Ron, you tell our story, we'll take care of you. We'll find a way to make you okay. You're gonna be good. Just do right by the ancestors, and we'll do right by you. And the people who are receiving what you're doing, they will support. So this is why I'm saying, well, like Brother Alvin Sykes, he never had any money. He never had a GMC or Cadillac or whatever do a commercial about what he actually did. He actually did the work that a lot of y'all talking about nobody's not doing. Everybody talking about, well, nobody's doing the real work. This brother did the real work and never got a dime for it. In-kind donations. Brother was living like a pauper. Never got what he should have got. He never got a MacArthur Genius Grant, what I think is interesting, because like I know, not knocking certain people, I know some journalists that got MacArthur Genius Grants. Nobody, I mean, a lot of that work's not being read by people. This brother did stuff that has impacted people. This man met Mammy Till a week before she passed away and made a promise to her, and he kept that promise. Because really, he was the guy behind the Emmett Till bill. Let me just read this. We love you, Melly. I appreciate it. One love. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sister Mimi. That means a lot coming from you. I aim to serve, man, but this brother should be given the proper send-off. Thank you for tuning in. That brother, I mean, his funeral was actually on April the 1st in Kansas City. You know, if things were different, I definitely would have been there. I would have tried my best to represent. Man, we just like, we don't really recognize the real ones. Like DMX, man, people slept on D, man. D should never been in the he should never have been forgotten. He should never had the tax problems. And you know, it's interesting. People, you know, we can't save nobody. You can't save. The only person you can save is yourself. You can't save nobody. But what I love is that this guy could have chose to be bitter. He could have chose to be cynical. He could have said, F it all. But you know, you got to think about it. This man is a product of a rape. This man was 14. The first time he met his father, from my understanding, was when he saw his father in a casket. The guy who raped his mother. She could have aborted Alvin. They could have, you know what I'm saying? But thank God she didn't do that. Thank God. You know. So, because if she did that, we wouldn't be talking about a lot of things. I mean, but yeah. But I know when people say, well, nobody's doing the work, it's people doing the work. They're not going to get recognized for doing said work. It's people doing work in your communities. I'm doing work. I'm not just doing like podcasts. I actually do other things. And people, like, what's funny about people is that they thought, damn, this dude's still doing it. And we're not really supporting him, but he's still doing it. And we try to make sure that he stop and quit where we could take over what he started. You know, a lot of things, you know, for Black people, we are the parents of civilization. We are the parent of humanity. And we forgot that we knew that we knew. It's kind of like how Black people are right now. It's kind of like you, that parent with the unruly kid at the grocery store, running around, knocking down things, putting hands everywhere. That's how white folks treat Black people. That's how we allow the so-called white folks to treat us. Even though they came from us, they are children. They learn everything from us. And it's time for us to reclaim our right, our inheritance, our birthright. It is time for that. Oh, that's a lot of money, man. But you know, but DMX said he said, all I want is a 5-year run. He had a great 5-year run from 98 to 2003, but he spoke them words that all he wanted was a 5-year run. Right? So with Black people, I'll tell Black people, your words create worlds, right? We can't be like white people. We have a special connection with the universe. So God, we speak stuff into existence. It's like DMX. I mean, like, yeah, DMX. He said all he wanted was a 5-year run. So look, everybody making deals. You know, people talking about he made a deal with the devil, whatever, Lucifer, Satan. You got to, because Lucifer, who was Lucifer in heaven? He was the master musician. He was the choir director. You know what I'm saying? He was a musician. He was the real Pied Piper, the original Pied Piper, you know? So, you know, everybody listen to that song Umbrella with Rihanna and Jay-Z. They talking about Umbrella, they talking about the Rain Man. Who you think the Rain Man? You know, people, the truth hides in plain sight. Thank you, Brother Bug. We love you madly. Thank you so much. The truth hides in plain sight, folks. I remember when I was in St. Louis for a Black Librarian Conference, like, you know, librarians throughout the whole country, they have a biannual, or not, I guess not, is that bi? I mean, they have it every 2 years, this conference of Black librarians, and they had it in St. Louis, and they had it at this beautiful public library in downtown St. Louis, right? You go in, they had Renaissance art, they had a lot of expensive artwork, artifacts and stuff. And I remember the tour guide took us to this room, and she said it was inspired by the Medicis, the patron saints of the Italian Renaissance, way long time ago. The Italian Renaissance, the Medicis. And she was saying, yeah, this was inspired by the Medicis. If you look at the ceiling, you see that our rams and ram heads in the ceiling. She said ram head or goat heads, ram heads. She said that's because so-and-so Medici was an Aries. I said, bitch, there ain't no, excuse me. I said, that's a Baphomet. There ain't no Aries. That's the devil head. Because he's an Aries, and why he got the ram head up in the ceiling. Nah, you talking about some Baphomet. I'm thinking about but folks, these are educated folks, they went along with it. Yeah, so-called Medici was an Aries. Yeah, nah, that was Baphomet. That was some devil stuff. That was some Satanism. You know, this stuff is real. You know, the father of the space program. I talked about Jack Parsons. Look up Jack Parsons. Dude was doing sex magic in the desert. He was trying to find the perfect white woman to bring in Rosemary. I mean, to bring in the devil, to bring in the Antichrist. He was messing with portals and stuff. You know, when people talk about CERN, the father of the space program, Jack Parsons, he was doing that stuff as a little kid, trying to summon demons and stuff. When he was a little kid, and look how he died all crazy, but he was friends with L. Ron Hubbard, who was naval intelligence, the founder of Scientology, and also Jack Parsons was a follower of Aleister Crowley. He was Aleister Crowley's disciple. He had correspondence with Aleister Crowley. And they said Aleister Crowley is Barbara Bush's actual father, because her mom went over to Europe and she connected with Aleister Crowley. If you look at Barbara Bush, that's George W. Bush mom, George H.W. Bush wife, she kind of looked like Aleister Crowley. She kind of looked like, so y'all look all this stuff up. It's interesting. Yeah, they were too real in the fake world. This is only a paper moon. It's just as phony as it can be. But it wouldn't be make believe if you believe in me. You know, they were too real, man. The world is fake, man. When you real, you're gonna have to sacrifice. You get sacrificed. The realists get sacrificed. Puffy's still around. Look how many people that Puffy, you know, Puffy, it's funny. Puffy is weird to me. He talking about he want to call out the music industry. He want to call out General Motors. But look what you did to your artist, Puffy. Look what you did to the Locks. Like, this is the thing about Puffy. Puffy got an amazing ear for talent. But the thing about Puffy, you got to leave at the right time. If, you know, Usher, Mary J. Blige, they left. If they didn't leave, they could have ended up like Faith Evans. Faith Evans should be a superstar. She should be a bigger star than she is. But she stayed with Puffy too long. It's a trick that you got to leave Puffy at the right time. Or Puffy was like, he was sap all your energy from you. You got folks running like G-Dep. Y'all remember G-Dep, Special Delivery? This man killed somebody and turned himself in. He got away with it and said, I can't deal with it no more. What did Puffy do to you guys, man? He turned himself in. I think he's in prison right now, G-Dep. You know, Special Delivery. Look, what happened to Black Rob? Craig Mack. Think about Loon. All these guys. What is Puffy doing over there, man? Even his mentor, who passed away last year. You know, Heavy D was connected to Puffy. You remember they had that thing back in the day? What it was a stampede at a charity event or a basketball game or something. Y'all remember back in the Puffy's Uptown days, you know, when they had that event and them people died, you know, Biggie dead. Biggie supposed to went to Europe or something. And Puffy said, come out to L.A. about 6 months after Tupac got shot in Vegas. Yeah, come on. Then do the song called Long Kiss Goodnight, freestyle on the radio. Yeah, man, they love you out in L.A. I'm going back to Cali. You should never went back. He should have took us some time to go back to Cali. So, I mean, all these sacrifices around Puff Daddy, he learned it from his mentor, Clyde Davis. You've been talking to some old school guys who was in the industry. You know, it was this famous or infamous scene where Clyde Davis took Janis Joplin into this room by herself. She signed this contract, from my understanding. Next thing you know, she dead. She died right across the street where they found the body of Bobby Fuller, the dude that they fought the law and the law won. That Bobby Fuller, who was found dead in his car. She died in the hotel right across the street where they found his body. We talked about this with brother A.L.L. Lanier. He was on my show, Nobody Dies a Natural Death in Show Business. We talked about Bobby Fuller, who had the same association with certain people that was associated with Sam Cooke. And both them guys died young. See, the good died young. DMX was a sacrifice. We all are blood sacrifices, but some are bigger than others. Because, like, why is it now that they want to help DMX and he dead? He can't be helped. Like, why is it alleged that Jay-Z and Beyonce want to buy his masters for his children? Why could they not help him while he was alive to feed his family? DMX is like one of the most, he did a lot of great things, but you know how DMX should be having Kanye West money. That man's voice was gold. You know how many movies and cartoons and voiceover work he could have done if he was able to get his personal life together? DMX should have been rolling it. He should never had to worry about money. Every time I open my mouth, a gold bar falls out. Every time I open my mouth. No, that voice, man. Everybody want, I mean, DMX is like Howlin' Wolf. Nobody can sound like that. I know, like Ja Rule, whatever. I mean, DMX was just amazing. He was just pure music, pure expression. He should never had a want for anything. But that's how it be, man. You in a system that demeans and dehumanizes black male masculinity. DMX is a miracle. So I don't feel tragic about it. I just wish that, man, I wish he could have did like, so he could have did, look at Eddie Murphy. He could have did a lot of cartoons, some classic cartoons and shit. I mean, I'm just saying. Just waste, man. But yeah, Puffy Nas X. Well, let me talk about Alvin Sykes though. I'm sorry. I just y'all get me carried away about this stuff, man. Our people got to wake up, man. We are so gifted and we don't even understand or understand the gift that's us. We keep on thinking that we need everybody. Everybody wants to be us and they hate us for it. They want to get rid of us and they use us to get rid of us. They use Stacey Abrams, what she did. You know, I mean, like Colorado is white man land. You know what I'm saying? Like they got the same voter ID stuff from my understanding, right? But yet you cost black businesses 150 mil. And that's y'all hero. Is this your queen? Is this your queen? You know what I'm saying? Like some Wakanda stuff going on. Black girl magic is destroying the black family. I'm sorry. Black girl magic is out of control. Hey, don't need to apologize, brother. We all in the same gang. You know, Miss Chalet said, we all in the same gang. Okay, let me stop now. But man, it's some crazy times, man. That's why I said I'm building my troll immunity, man. I ain't worried about these trolls. They go their ass back on the bridge if I'm they'll get some vitamin D over here. Ain't no sunshine where she gone. When she's away. Arf, arf, arf. Shit. But anyway, make it back in one piece, baby. You know, also, y'all know this is the 20th anniversary year of Leah's death. She was blood sacrifice. Was she passed around like a blunt? She went from R. Kelly to Jay-Z to Dame Dash. Her uncle sold her. He gave her to R. Kelly. You know, R. Kelly produced her first album, but it was on her uncle's label. He connected them. You know, Aaliyah just never had a chance, man. And I love Aaliyah. It's like when I listen to her, she reminds me of Aaliyah without the dance moves and Lauryn Hill without the baggage. I love her, man. her. I just hope that she could just, she said she got her head on right. Can you look at even like, I don't know, I think was she a part of Disney at one point? You look at them child stars from Disney, MK Ultra sex kid and stuff going on with them. And people like Britney Spears, it's a miracle that she's still around. She's supposed to be dead like Whitney Houston right now. Anyway, I'm just saying. That's our dear brother Alvin. Serious. Like I said, this brother, he like the black Aaron Brockovich. Y'all remember that movie Aaron Brockovich with Julia Roberts playing that white woman who was a paralegal? Yes, she was able to expose some environmental wrongdoing out in California. He deserved a movie like that. If he make that movie, black folk, man, I can't even know this dude existed. This guy been in our presence all these years, took a vow of poverty, basically changed the game. He's the lawyer that black folks think we should have, but we don't deserve people like Alvin Sykes. That's the problem. We deserve Ben Crumps and Lee Merritt's. No disrespect, but Alvin Sykes was like in that level. He was on that level. He was like a Charles Hamilton Houston, or even, dare I say, a Thurgood Marshall. But he just loved his people, man. He didn't care about all the trappings. But he's human too. I just wish that things could have played out different for our dear brother. He's got that love. This is the New York Times obituary. Alvin Sykes, 64, self-taught legal defender of civil rights, dies. After dropping out of high school, he studied law at the public library, then used his knowledge to reopen cold cases, including Emmett Till's murder. Okay, let me read this. Written by Clay Risen. Alvin Sykes, who left high school in the 8th grade, completed his education by reading legal textbooks at the public library, and later used his vast knowledge of the law to pry open long dormant murder cases from the civil rights era, including the 1955 lynching of Emmett Till. Died on March 19th at a hospice facility in Shawnee, Kansas. He was 64. The cause was complications from a fall 2 years ago that had left him partly paralyzed, said Jomo Webster, a longtime friend. See, what happened when he was in, I think, the train station in Kansas City. This is me. This is not New York Times. This is Brother Ron's interpretation about what happened to Brother Alvin. He was in the train station, I believe, in Kansas City, and he was trying to catch his train, and he slipped and fell and hit his head. That caused him to be partly paralyzed, because he actually was on the way to Chicago, I believe, for the birthday celebration. One of Emmett Till's last, cousins who saw him last, Willard Parker. I think Willard Parker was now that night when they kidnapped Emmett Till from his great uncle Mose Wright's home. So he was on his way to the 80th birthday celebration, I believe, for Willard Parker, and he slipped and hit his head on concrete or something. So, though he never took a bar exam, Mr. Sykes was a brilliant legal and legislative operator whose admirers include city council members, politicians, and U.S. attorneys general from both parties. Alvin Sykes was a superb attorney, better than I ever was. David Haley, a Kansas state senator, said in an interview, I've watched him argue the law in front of appellate court judges. He understood the law innately. Mr. Sykes converted to Buddhism in his 20s, and he led a monk's life in the name of social justice. He rarely held a job, wore secondhand clothing, and lacked a permanent address for long stretches of time, staying with friends instead and living off donations and later speaker fees. He never learned to drive and so walked everywhere, most often to the reference section of the library in Kansas City, Missouri, where he did his research, or to a booth at a restaurant that he used as an informal office, his papers surrounded by cups of coffee and stubbed out cigarettes. Along with his work on cold cases, he successfully lobbied for local, state, and federal laws, reforming jury selection, promoting animal rights, and enhancing the role of DNA in murder investigations. Anyone who worked in civil rights during the last several decades knew Alvin Sykes, said Brian Levin, the director of the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism at California State University, San Bernardino. He changed the face of American law, and he learned it all in a Kansas City library. I told y'all Black history is better than science fiction or a Hollywood movie. This is better than a superhero movie, especially from the DC universe right now. DC universe sucks. Okay. His first victory came in 1983 when he persuaded the Department of Justice to reopen the case of Steve Harvey, a Black musician who had been killed by a white man in a Kansas City park in 1980. A jury had acquitted the assailant, Raymond L. Bledsoe, but Mr. Sykes argued that Mr. Bledsoe had infringed on Mr. Harvey's civil rights on public property, a violation of the 1968 Civil Rights Act. The federal government took up the case, and Mr. Bledsoe was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. The case brought Mr. Sykes national acclaim, but something Mr. Harvey's widow said. Her husband was the second victim of a racial injustice in her family, the first being her distant cousin, Emmett Till. Wow, it was in the cards, man. Two white men had been charged with kidnapping and murdering the 14-year-old Till in Money, Mississippi in 1955. Though an all-white jury had acquitted them, Till's death became a galvanizing moment for the civil rights movement. Mr. Sykes spent years researching the law around the case, and he was convinced that there was a way to reopen it. He presented his argument to a district attorney in Mississippi, and in 2005, the Justice Department took it up. They actually exhumed Emmett Till's body to prove that it was Emmett Till, because this is me talking, y'all. Because during the trial for the brothers, the sheriff and them were claiming that it may not be Emmett Till that they pulled out the Tallahatchie River, because they didn't have all the DNA testing. But the only way his mom could identify him was by the ring that he had on his hand from his father, Louis Till, who got killed in crazy circumstances in World War II. He was executed by the army. They accused his father of raping and killing white women in Europe, but that's another story. Though the department decided against new charges at the time, it did reopen the case again in 2018. Why? And Carolyn Bryan is still free, y'all. She's living free. She's like free like OJ all day, I think, in North Carolina. That's the woman who accused Emmett Till of whistling at her, but she said it was a lie. The Till case spurred Mr. Sykes to press the government to look into similar injustices. In 2005, he helped write a bill to fund a civil rights cold case initiative within the FBI. But the bill met potentially fatal opposition from Senator Tom Coburn of Oklahoma, a Republican who thought that the proposal was a waste of money. Undeterred, Mr. Sykes reached out to Senator Coburn, and after several failed attempts, got a meeting with him. Following an hours-long conversation, the senator not only relented, but also became an advocate for the bill. Yeah, he was a smooth operator. That brother, Alvin Sykes, like I said, I saw it in person, man. He was like a snake charmer. We are going to see this bill coming to fruition, Senator Coburn said on the Senate floor in 2007, acknowledging Mr. Sykes just before the Senate sent the bill to President George W. Bush to sign. I can't say enough about his stamina, his integrity, his forthrightness, his determination. Alvin Lee Sykes was born on July 21st, 1956 in Kansas City, Kansas. He said that his father, Vernon Evans, had raped his mother, Patricia Sykes, who was 14 years old when she gave birth to him. 8 days later, an acquaintance of his mother, Bernetta F. Page, took him in as a foster child. He is survived by Edna Dill, his foster sister. Mr. Sykes had a painful childhood. He suffered from epilepsy and mental illness and was in and out of hospital. Two of his neighbors, he said, both adults, sexually assaulted him twice. Mrs. Page had to mortgage her house to cover his medical bills, and she later sent him to live in Boys Town, the home for at-risk youth outside Omaha, Nebraska. When he returned, he lived for a year with his birth mother and then with an uncle. Though he promised his uncle he would stay in school, he left out the 8th grade, and to bide his time during the day, he visited the public library's main branch in Kansas City, Missouri. There was a time when somebody like me wouldn't have been allowed inside the library, or as a black man permitted to read at all, he told the journalist Monroe Dodd, the author of a short biography about Mr. Sykes. but I was able to revolve much of my life around the library. I sought and got my education there. In 2013, the library named its first scholar in residence. Mr. Sykes joined the Marines in 1974, and when he left a year later, he became the manager for a Kansas City funk band, Threatening Weather. He spent several years working in and around the city's music scene and met the jazz pianist Herbie Hancock. The two became friends, and Mr. Hancock, a Buddhist, persuaded Mr. Sykes to convert. His success in the Harvey case made Mr. Sykes famous around Kansas City as a tireless advocate for victims of injustices, large and small, from murder to the denial of food stamps. Nor did he limit his activism to civil rights. He persuaded his friend, State Senator Haley, to sponsor a bill making extreme cruelty to animals a felony. Some of his positions were seemingly at odds with his civil rights record. In the late 1980s, Mr. Sykes and Mr. Haley supported an application by the Ku Klux Klan for airtime on a Kansas City public access TV station. Mr. Sykes defended their right to free speech, but also said that letting them air their racist views would turn off more people than attract them. He was right. The show drew few viewers and ended within a few months. In March 2019, Mr. Sykes was rushing through Union Station in Kansas City to catch a train to Chicago to attend the 80th birthday party of Reverend Willa Parker Jr., who as a child was the last person to see Emmett Till alive aside from his murderers. Mr. Sykes tripped and hit his head, leaving him partly paralyzed and hospitalized for the rest of his life. Though he couldn't grip a pen, he continued to work from his bed, successfully pushing for a bill to abolish statutes of limitation on childhood sexual assault cases. One of his final achievements before his accident was a measure in Kansas establishing a task force on the use of DNA in cold cases. But after 2 years, with the legislation about to lapse, the task force had not returned its report. And up until a few days before his death, Mr. Sykes was working the phone, trying to get the provision renewed. It has since been reauthorized, and Senator Haley said he would propose renaming it in Mr. Sykes' honor. Man, what a man, man. God bless this man. God bless his soul. May he be at rest. Brother Alvin Sykes, incredible human being. And yet we don't even talk about people like him. This is a guy who really do believe Black Lives Matter, right? He lived, that's his life. Man took a vow of poverty. And let me say this about him too. The DNA stuff. Like, this brother was a bad man. They didn't even talk about how he got the Kansas City police to reopen the murder case of Leon Jordan. Y'all don't even know who Leon Jordan was. Look him up. Leon Jordan was a bad black man in a very good way. He was kind of like the Adam Clayton Powell Jr. of Kansas City and Missouri, or misery politics. He started an organization called Freedom Incorporated, which it was a black first agenda. This is back in the 60s and stuff. He had a B1 agenda. He wanted to make sure that black voters got what they wanted when they voted. So, and also he was a guy that he was fearless. He actually, I'm gonna do a show about him along with some other people. He actually, I believe, went to Liberia. He actually trained the police force over in Liberia. I believe that's what he did. You know, Liberia was the slave colony America said in Africa. He actually went over there and trained them, I believe, and came back to Kansas City. He made a lot of powerful enemies because he was very adamant about black folks getting self-respect through politics and economics. And he actually punched this fellow Italian politician in the face. He roundhouse punched this dude. And this guy was connected to the mafia, Kansas City mob. But he told him, all he wanted from Jordan was, hey, just apologize, man. And Jordan apologized because he knew that when he hit that Italian guy, that he was marked for death. But the Italian dude said, don't worry about it. He told the gangsters, don't worry about it. Then the Italian dude died of a heart attack in the late 60s. And then 18 months later, Leon Jordan was leaving his venue called the Green Tavern, something like that, and he got shotgunned to death. He was shotgunned to death by some black thugs. And now we know that the black thugs were hired by the mob. Some mafia associate hired them to kill because the shotgun came from the mob. They traced it back to the mob. it was involved in a burglary, a recent crime before they end up using it to kill Leon Jordan. And Alvin Sykes, a one-man crusade, he got them to look back into that case. And now we know that it was a mafia hit because of his work. He got them to look into the case about 11 years ago. And they reopened it because he got killed. Leon Jordan got killed July 15th, 1970. And I think his widow died in 1995, but she believed that it was a mob hit. Now, they use black folks to do white folks bidding. See how this shit works? You know, y'all team on the nation. Well, you know, William O'Neill, the FBI used a black dude to get the floor plan of Fred Hampton's house apartment, right? You think about even in the Nation of Islam, if you don't want the nation, well, they got ill compromise. You know, the national secretary was FBI, John Ali. Then you had Malcolm's chief bodyguard, Gene Robbins, was NYPD undercover. So they're always using black folks. They use black folks to get Marcus Garvey, the first FBI agent, Agent 800, James Warman Jones. They can't get us without us getting us. You understand? They can't touch us without our consent. We always sell each other out. So they use these black thugs to kill the mob, use the white mob, they call them the black mafia. You know, you hear a lot of black mafias, but these black dudes were part of the black mafia of Kansas City. And you know what's crazy? I'll read some of the articles related to this story about Leon Jordan. They found it was a jailhouse lawyer, a white dude who's in prison. He was 75 years old about 11 years ago. I don't know if he's still alive. This white boy, kind of like a white boy Rick. I mean, this white dude was part of the leadership of the black mafia. Don't the white folks got their own mafia? Why you gotta have a white dude part of the part of the damn black mafia? It's some white boy Rick stuff. We just love white folks to death, man. But he said, yeah, that they, you know, that his associates did kill Leon Jordan as a favor for the mafia, for the white mafia, for the Italians, because like he was holding up some political legislation. Because like Leon Jordan was no punk, he was no pushover. That man was a G, and he stood on his, and it cost him his life. But now we know because of the brother Alvin Sykes pushing, because the cops said a lot of the evidence was destroyed and they couldn't find the gun. You know, and Alvin Sykes, like I say, he's like a Buddhist, man. He's out the art of meditation. Guy was very patient. And I tell you, he know how to work the angles. He said, look, evidence that was missing turn up all the time. And guess where they found the damn gun that shot and killed Leon Jordan? They found it in the trunk of a police car. Somebody put that gun in the trunk of a police car. It was there for years. Because that happened back in 1970. We just like they reopened the case in 2010. So they found this gun. So, we don't know how the gun got in there. I think what happened, it's like you can't hide the BS, but Alvin Sykes helped solve that case. Or what happened? Who killed Leon Jordan? So who care about Ben Crump? This the dude y'all was looking for all this time. He just was a poor dude in Kansas City, you know, working on a computer in the library. He looked the part, but he was a superhero in disguise. The man was amazing. Like I say, look how he came out. He's a product of a rape. So y'all be thinking about abortions. We are aborting our revolutionaries and our innovators and our liberators. Stop this abortion BS. I understand why. Don't get me wrong. I understand why, because this system is so inhumane towards people that look like us. If you black, we don't, you know, but we got to find a way. We had large families back in the day. We had no money. We had no nickels to rub together. And somehow we made it with 20 families, 20 family members and 18 family members. But I'm saying, like, we got to get back into the village concept of things. Alvin Sykes should not been no GoFundMe to raise money for Alvin Sykes to get properly buried. That's an insult. All the people he helped, this man was able to help create legislation. Man should have been a law professor. He should have been a tenured law professor. This guy should have been taking care of like Morris Deeds down the Southern Poverty Law Center. The Southern Poverty Law Center is why you call yourself the poverty? They poverty pimps, ain't it? Because they were like, look, it was this Jewish guy that I interviewed on my show some years ago. And he used to work for Dr. King down the SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership Conference offices. He said, Ron, I'm going to tell you something. This is a Jewish guy tell me all the secrets. He said, look, you want to learn how much these nonprofits are making? See, I got a nonprofit, but my nonprofit ain't profitable. It's grassroots oriented, but nonprofit is big business. It's a site called a Charity Navigator. It's called Charity Navigator because by law, nonprofits must disclose their financial situation. They must be transparent with the public as it relates to their financial assets and stuff like that. So he told me to look at the Southern Poverty Law Center. At that time, this is back in the late 2000s when I did this. They had an endowment of almost $300 million. The Southern Poverty Law Center had an endowment of $300 million just about. Morris Dees, one of the founders. I didn't know that Julian Munn was a co-founder of the Southern Poverty Law Center. I met Julian Munn a couple of times, and he was interesting. He's an ancestor now, but Morris Dees and his friend, who was the president, whatever, they were making 6 figures a year just off the nonprofit. I ain't talking about speaker fees. I ain't talking about consulting fees. I ain't talking about book deals. I'm talking about as a base salary, they were pulling in 6 figures. And you know how they got that started? It was a black woman that sued the United Klan of America, I believe, down in Alabama. The Klan lynched her son. I think it was down in Mobile. I don't know, it was Mobile, Montgomery, but it was in Alabama. They had him hanging from a tree in her front yard. And they're acting like that it was a suicide, but they looked and it wasn't. Black people ain't really hanging themselves from trees. I mean, we never really did that. We're gonna kill ourselves. We ain't hanging from trees. But Morris Dees got involved and they successfully sued. Now they prosecuted the guys who were involved. I believe one of them got killed, executed. I don't know if both of them were executed. Y'all gotta look that up, okay? I'm tired of coming back on the next episode. I got it wrong, folks, but I'm just telling you the gist of the story, right? So they sued the United Klan of America. I think they were the largest Klan chapter or whatever organization at that time, just back in the early 80s. And the woman won the deed to their land and stuff like that. And that's how Morris Dees got his thing. They got their entry into the social justice activism game. So yeah, it's a site called Charity Navigator. So these guys are making so much money. I know a guy interviewed who's a famous filmmaker. I'm not gonna name his name on here. I'll let him say it, but he told me when he had this project he was pitching, he went to Morris Dees, they wouldn't support it. And then his project came out. It was related to the subject of Emmett Till. And he all became an instant celebrity. And then Morris Dees invited him to his home. Now he said he went to Morris Dees' home. It was in a gated community. Now, we talking about Southern Poverty Law Center, right? Y'all thinking about these black preachers being poverty pimps. But he went to the dude home, gated community. He was living in a Mediterranean style mansion. And this off of black people misery. So y'all talking about the Black Lives Matter lady getting her $1 million home. White folks been perfecting that. You know what I'm saying? They've been perfecting that. So this dude was living good off of black folks misery and that's the American way. And I'm not knocking Morris Dees. Don't hate the player, hate the game. What I'm saying is y'all some Johnny newcomers and Janet newcomers to this BS. This always been going on. So y'all get mad at Tamika Mallory for getting a bag and get mad at old girl getting the home, whatever. But look, white folks, look, the Southern Poverty Law Center, they got a list of people you're supposed to hate. They hate people, the so-called hate list, right? All these hate groups and come on, man. It's a game. What Bobby Dick Gregory told, it's a game. You said a big pimping. Yeah, blowing the cheese, big pimping. We love you, man. Thank you, Black Voltron Reloaded. Yeah. Yeah, but it's a price to play. It's a price to pay when you play that game. Everybody make a deal. Thank you for that. So okay, let me play. I'll get up my pulpit now. Let me play an interview I did with our dear brother back in 2014. Not that long after he was named the first, I guess, scholar in residence at the Kansas City Public Library. Y'all need to just look him up on YouTube, Alvin Sykes. He's brilliant, brother. One of the finest legal minds. He was one of the finest legal minds on the planet. This man was able to find legal loopholes that folks that went to school, so-called, they claim celebrated lawyers couldn't find. on both sides, whether it be defense or the prosecution or the plaintiff. You know, the guy was brilliant. But let me play this interview I did of him. I might got some more stuff. I know I have another interview I did. My first interview I did with him, I think it was in 2009. But I want to play this interview that's from 2014, so you can hear him in his own words. And then I guess we can wrap it up. But thank y'all for being patient and for listening to We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century. Appreciate y'all. We love you madly. Let me give him a shout out. I'm gonna make sure I give proper shout out. Thank you, Sister Mimi, for a great show. Thank you. We love you madly, Sister Mimi. Thank you for the donation. Just to show you, I do y'all shout outs. If I miss y'all, I don't know if y'all donated because things moving fast on my side of the screen. I'm just so busy talking and running my mouth. I just want to thank everybody who's been supportive of the show, who's been consistent in supporting the work. I thank y'all and know that the best is yet to come. Got some great shows coming up this week. Got one tomorrow. Judge in the house. Judge in the house. Judge in the house. Judge in the house. We got Judge Joe Brown tomorrow. So we're going to talk about some interesting stuff. So it's going to be early afternoon, late afternoon, early afternoon. Who knows? It's going to be tomorrow. We're going to have Judge Joe Brown here tomorrow. So thank y'all for supporting. Thank y'all. I appreciate it, man. The best is yet to come. But let me get this situated. You're gonna hear Brother Alvin Sykes' own words. And this We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century. Let's rock and roll.
This is We All Be News and Radio.
Ron Hurd. Get up out of bed. Let's go. Let's go. Ron Hurd. That's the word. Get out of bed. Give me a jingle. My number 051. Get out of bed. Let's go. Don't be afraid. This is Herb Smith calling you. Herb Smith. All right, I know you're famous and all that kind of stuff, but let's go. Get out of bed.
And we're moving on to our next segment. Very important. It's like, like I said, I'm giving y'all 2 shows for one. You can't beat this, so y'all should think about really supporting We All Be, the We All Be movement, because we all about information dissemination in the 21st century. And we got another special guest. This guy is incredible. He's one of the people you think came out of Hollywood. This story is unbelievable. Because how can a person with an 8th grade education become one of the most brilliant legal minds and strategists of our times? How can a person who has no office use the libraries of America as his public office? In doing so, he helped to create a lot of lasting institutional changes. Let me just give him his proper due by reading this quick bio. And the second hour, we're talking about giving Justice Crusader, Brother Alvin Sykes, his just due, along with flowers. Brother Alvin Sykes is a self-taught human rights worker who relies on local libraries for his primary research. The Kansas City Public Library's 2013 Scholar in Residence. He works with the justice system on behalf of minorities and the poor. A true man of action, Brother Alvin Sykes has testified before U.S. Congress, been the ears of politicians, and played an instrumental role in creating the Emmett Till Unsolved Civil Rights Crime Act, which gives the U.S. Department of Justice the means to investigate long ago cases of civil rights violations. Yet much of his work has been low profile. A case of workplace discrimination here, food stamps denied, or an unfair eviction there. Frequently, his work is not only unpublicized, but also uncompensated, which equates to unsung. However, this day, we will pay homage to the man and sing his praises. without further ado, this guy is incredible, and I'm so excited and giddy. The one, the only, Brother Alvin Sykes. How you doing today?
I'm doing great and honored to be on your show, Brother Herb. It is indeed an honor and a pleasure, and I'm just so happy.
Yeah, I'm sorry for taking so long. There's so much information we get out here, but man, I just want to give you a due, man. Like, much props to you, sir, because I remember hearing about you, man, years ago. I used to I was a fan of A.L.L's American Justice with Bill Curtis.
Yeah.
It came on in the late 90s, the early 2000s. I can remember that case so well about your friend, exceptional musician, saxophonist, Steve Harvey, not the comedian. He probably is the most talented Steve Harvey, though, actually. But he got killed. He got killed, right? And you, not the police, you actually helped bring the man who killed him to justice. So it's really an honor. I still remember that when I first time I saw that program years ago. And it stayed with me.
That was City
on there talking about it. Yeah, it was City Confidential, right. Thank you for correcting me.
Right.
They were two of my best shows, City Confidential and American Justice, but I love that show. So it was an honor to have you on, man, because people need to know more about your story. To me, they need to do a Hollywood movie about you. I mean, Aaron Brockovich can't touch you.
Well, I appreciate you expressing that, but I do have a mission in life and pursue the truth and justice, and wherever that takes me, that's where I go. But I do want to leave somewhat of a legacy so that the younger people can be able to see that this is something that they can do and that they must do. It's a responsibility that goes from generation to generation, and I'm just doing my part now.
Well, the amazing thing about it is, like I said, I mean, you do things like with no shoestring. You have no shoestring budget. You don't have shoestrings. You can't afford them. But yeah, you get more done than the congressmen we have in Congress and politicians that people put millions of dollars behind. How can a person in the capitalistic system with no money, barely any type of resources, achieve the things you have achieved, like being the architect of the Emmett bill, which allowed the Department of Justice to solve and prosecute these folks involved in these cold cases? How were you able to do that?
Well, it comes basically from 2 points for me. I mean, because number one, it's not a position that you would want to be in to have to do it without the resources. But then if you have heart and you have commitment, and for me, a strong spiritual base, then I'm able to do it with whatever you have. If you're on the righteous side and you have a strong spiritual base, you'll get the assistance and what you need to get across the finish line.
Okay, so I want to know how you got started. I know how you got started, but I know you talked about it in a great Kansas City library interview you did last month. I want to get a viewer's idea of where you came from and understand how extraordinary your legacy, your journey has been. Talk about your roots a little bit.
Well, as a child, I was a child of a 14-year-old child. And fortunately for me, at 8 days old, a 48-year-old woman, Bernetta Page, then started raising me and adopted me in her heart, and raised me up to 12. Basically, I was a sick child, so I had epilepsy and I had this feeling that I wasn't going to live long, and so I had a very serious focus early on in life with a sense of urgency to learn as many things as I could and do as much as I could. I was certainly blessed because Bernetta Page instilled in me the love of reading, and it was starting off at that early age, knowing the value of reading is. I would get up, she would get up with me in the mornings on Fridays to sell the local black newspaper, the Kansas City Call, and sell Jet magazine, keeping me in the reading showing me how important that was, as well as in the entertainment world in terms of music. And she bought a baby grand piano and trombone and trumpet and for me and my sister. So it was a lot of what I'm getting the praise and the accolades for now. The results started a lot with this woman here and the sacrifices that she made in raising me. And unfortunately, as time went on during that period, there were people who lived across the street who Mama had said to stay away from, but they had candy, and so that attracted me. And so these people, was a man and a woman, and for a while they would just give me candy, and I'd come over, and then one day the candy stopped. And when I couldn't understand what was going on, then they raped me. And it was because at that point, me being that young and not knowing who to go to or what to do or why this happened and why the candy stopped and why this hurt and all this, I started to realize that there needed to be somebody in the community between victims and families and the law enforcement that can help them make the right decisions. I didn't have anyone like that, so I made the decision to go back and find out why they did it, which resulted in them attacking me again. And then I never went back. But it was the next year when Martin Luther King was assassinated, and I couldn't understand why someone would kill someone who had devoted his life to peace, and why the Black community would riot and tear up the community behind a man who devoted his life to peace. So that's when I started in my own little way having what I call a community police force, and it was basically me and a friend of mine who rode around, and I was turning in people that were setting the fires and in terms of doing the riot. And it was that transforming moment that let me know that I was going to be the type of person that I was going to live, and that I was going to be the type of person that I had thought about the year before when I was attacked, that there had to be somebody like that. It was then that I realized that I would be that type of person, and that's where my life has been going through various journeys up to now.
Well, what's interesting, like the fact that you was sexually traumatized by this couple. That story is actually more familiar in the Black community than people know. I had an uncle in a similar situation to yours who was victimized by a neighborhood person, and in my mom's neighborhood growing up. This person, actually, his sister would lure my uncle and other young Black boys to their home with candy, spend the night and all this stuff. And then her brother actually sexually molested a lot of these Black boys. And so this story is more, it's really more for me than people want to give it credit for as being taboo. But I remember talking to Dick Gregory one day. He talked about, don't let certain things become the theme of your movie. Your life is a movie. Don't let certain things become the theme. Like if you was like taken advantage of at a young age, and if you're 50 years old, and all you think about is what happened to you when you was young. Because my thing is like, a lot of times it's not about what happened to you, it's how you respond to that. How are you able to respond to that? Like, be able to get back in the fight? That's amazing to me. Because, I mean, how were you able to choose another path than one towards of self-destruction and self-loathing?
Well, I have always been very spiritual, even as a child. I was raised in Catholic church, and I was altar boy and all those things during that a period of time, and then I kind of transitioned from the organized church to a more one-on-one relationship with God, as I perceived it. So whatever, everything in my life, I can never not remember a period where I wasn't spiritual in having that somewhere at the center of my pursuit. So as time went on, after, in terms of riot, my mom was able to get me into Boys Town up in Omaha, and I went up to Boys Town for 3 years, and that was a transitioning because that was really the first time that I was having male figures in my life. And then I came back from Boys Town and went to live with my natural family for the first time, and that included a cousin, Alonzo Scooter Powell, who was very popular with the local bands, Threatening Weather, and they were, the #1 band around here. So when I went to live with him, I started to get involved with the band with him and manage the band and, work in that kind of activity and get to know all the musicians around in town since Threatening Weather was so popular. The second thing was there was a community organization called the Social Action Committee of 20, SAC 20, that comes from the nationalist side of the movement, and I joined with them and started learning about my blackness and all the things that comes with that. And it was the combination of those two things in my life that brought me across Steve Harvey, who was one of those prominent musicians that everyone, he was very highly regarded here. And my involvement in SAC 20 gave me the street creds, so to speak, even as a young person, to be able to be involved in it. And that led to the Ad Hoc Group Against Crime and ultimately involvement in the Steve Harvey Justice Campaign in the pursuit of his case. But all during that time, and particularly at the age of 18, I met Herbie Hancock, who was a jazz musician who was practicing Buddhism. And I happened to come to one of his performances from the musical side. But when I went backstage before he was to play, and I heard this chanting going on, I was just so fascinated by it that all I could think about during the whole concert was, what was that noise he was making? So afterwards, I walked up to him and asked him, I said, Herbie, what was that noise you was back there making? And he said, I'm your holy gay Joe, and how we can become absolutely happy from within ourselves, wherever we're at, that we don't have to be a slave to the environment. We can grow and prosper and become absolutely happy right where we are. And spoke from human revolution, about human revolution. And since I was an activist and I wasn't really scared about revolutions, all that was attracted to me. And it's through that 40-year practice with my mentor and now best friend, Herbie Hancock, has led to is the foundation of the revolutionary type of and extraordinary type of things that people see that I do and accomplish.
Yeah, it has been definitely extraordinary. It does take a certain type of principle, discipline, spiritual mindset, I will believe. Because, man, how are you able to support yourself doing these things? Like, these are huge undertakings, these cases you're involved in, and things you're traveling to D.C. or, how are you able to support what you're doing?
Well, during the past, it was very difficult. It would be, people would see me, but they wouldn't see the other people who would give some money here or there, or to pay for airline tickets there. But those people and those type of people have always been there. it's been a very difficult struggle, but because of the belief of the responsibility that comes with being successful at this, it just didn't leave me any choice. And I woke up and I was 15, and woke up and I was 25, and woke up and I was 35, and still pursuing and going forward with it. But now I'm at a transitioning point because that's not sustainable. And for the long haul, and there's a need for the younger people to be able to come up and take those reins and move with it. So I'm transitioning from the not-for-profit world to the for-profit world, and forming a company of my own, Sykes Ventures, to be a consultant type of company, and do speaking engagements and do and write these, particularly my autobiography, but other literary projects as well, to raise the money that's a lot easier or simpler, I should say, to do in that world than it is in the not-for-profit world. And the things that people have seen about me up to now is not what they're going to remember me most positively for the rest of my life. That's to come.
Yeah, I know legacy is so important to you, and in our last segment, we talked about the importance of knowing our history and sharing that with our young people. And my concern with you is the fact that you did so much great grassroots direct action, got the results with no money, no fanfare. And yet, I'm concerned that these footprints you left in the sand is going to be wiped away unless we get a way to get this stuff documented and preserved for posterity. So you said you're transitioning from the nonprofit to the for-profit. What are some steps you're taking to make sure that your legacy will be secured in terms of being told in the books and documentaries and stuff like that? What are you doing as far as hands-on specifically?
I'm going to be the author of Show Me Justice, the Epic Life Journey of Alvin Page Sykes. That is to be my autobiography. Those that participated at the library seen a booklet, which is Pursuit of Truth, and it tells my life story in a synopsis from the library perspective, and how I used the library to gain the education that I did. But the Show Me Justice will be the entirety of my life and put it in the perspectives of not only my life, but the times that we were in at the various periods in my life, and then document the pursuit of justice and how it was done. It really doesn't. I don't like talking not to have money for the efforts, but in the reality, it's knowledge is the key to power. I mean, if you can afford a phone call to Washington and you got the right knowledge and the right evidence, you can get a lot accomplished without money. So in the sense of me, over the years, having developed a relationship within the law enforcement and the Justice Department, as well as keeping focus on the pursuit of truth and justice, and let that rule and be the road that I travel on. That has made it the achievements a lot simpler to achieve. But for the level on a worldwide basis that I'm looking toward now, it's going to take more resources. Plus, I'm getting old, and so I don't have a lot of the energy that it was easier to do earlier on. And I want to make sure that there is a financial basis for me and my family when I'm gone, and that's what Sykes Ventures and in particular the autobiography will
And also, are you thinking about? I mean, your story is made for the movie, for the big screen, at least for the little screen somewhere. Are you looking at ways to make your story, your life story, into a movie or some type of even documentary?
Well, I do have an agent that I work with in terms on this, and within Sykes Ventures and in the effort that the agent is doing, those are options in all those areas that would be dealt with. So, I mean, there has been inquiries ever since I've got involved with Emmett Till's case. There have been several inquiries from movie direction and different spins that various producers were looking to do. But now that I'm at this point in my life, I'm looking first to get the book down and then work on the screenplay and I am fortunate with an agent out of New York to have that kind of access, and so it's kind of following that guidance in that direction. This year in the event at the library was way more. It was way more than just a scholar in residence ceremony. As great and as tremendous as that was, but what it was really more of was the launch into this latest era of my life, on a worldwide basis in pursuit of truth and justice, and to focus on documenting this for in all its multimedia forms for the future.
And how can people book you for a lecture or for a speech or for a workshop? What would be the best way to reach out to you to get you booked? Because you definitely can be heard. You know, I feel like you should be lecturing at the greatest law schools in the world, and you know, you should be in front of young people, and people should know your name. It should be a household name, because it really is a name of respect and honor, and you got a great brand. So how can people book you?
Well, I certainly appreciate that. If people want to contact me directly in writing, it's Alvin Sykes, ALVIN SYKES, Sykes Ventures, SYKES, one word, Ventures, VENTURES, Sykes Ventures, 155 South 18th Street, Kansas City, Kansas, 66102, and it's Suite 290.
So we'll definitely have the information available on the website. We'll post it later on as well. And I will
let me give you the email. Let me give you the email address. If they want to reach me by email, it's Alvin, ALVIN, at SykesVentures.com. And the telephone number is 913-954-2360.
Yeah, that's so we got that. We're gonna post all the information up because this guy definitely needs to be making his way around. There is no reason why we can't support people who support all of us. It's the people like Brother Alvin Sykes, the foot soldiers, the grassroots warriors that make life better for everybody else, that make life better for everybody. It's kind of like, you know, like when I hear people say, well, I march with Dr. King or I work with Malcolm X. But, you know, everybody that could validate that, a lot of them have passed on and a lot of them have not left behind any personal narrative. And I think that's very important that, you know, we document our own history, that we become the tell of our own stories, the recorder of our own deeds. That's so important. So I just want to talk, I want to flip because people say, why are you asking them all this stuff? Because they can just Google you up, they can find so much information on you. So I want to ask you, like, you know, let's talk about the Steve Harvey case. Now, there's such a profound way to make your debut into, like, you know, becoming a real
the national stage.
You know?
Right.
Yes, sir, the national stage.
Steve Harvey was like I said earlier, was a very prominent musician here. And at the time that Steve, both him being killed and then ultimately the state trial, there had been four other musicians killed in the metropolitan area. So there was a heightened sensitivity in the musical community and the community at large about particularly with the musical community. When Steve's murder trial that was Raymond Bledsoe was charged with his first-degree murder, Raymond Bledsoe ultimately had an all-white jury that acquitted him on the murder charges. At the point that happened, it's when I got involved in the case. I knew at the time that you couldn't do anything more on the state level with the case because of double jeopardy. And because of my relationship with knowledge about the Civil Rights Division and the Justice Department, I knew that was the only option. And so I initiated and called the Justice Department, and who we found out years later was an intern, initially rejected my inquiry and said that murder wasn't a state offense except in certain circumstances, and since neither the perpetrator or the victim was a government official, then it would be a state matter. So then I went back that same day, or I think it was the next day, and another champion of justice from within the Department of Justice was named Donald Berger. And he was like my partner in justice since the age of 18. And I took it to him, and he basically said, bull, and the rest that goes with that, and spoke about there being a case out in Salt Lake, Utah, where two joggers had been killed by Joseph Paul Franklin, the one who was just executed here not too long ago in Missouri, and that neither that was being federally investigated, and neither one were government officials. So armed with that, I went to the library, went early in the morning and just started looking, knowing that somewhere it would be there, but not knowing where it would be, just knowing that somewhere. And just started looking through all the law books and process elimination, and just got it down to about 10 minutes before closing. I had been there with Steve Harvey's widow all day and found that statute that said whether or not under color of law. And as soon as I seen that statute, and it said that if you deprive someone of their rights to the use of a public facility because of them being a protected class, whichever one it applied to, that it was a civil rights violation. And that's when I contacted back to the Civil Rights Division, end up with that same person, started citing the statute to her. And she said, oh, that's too much for me. You got to talk to my supervisor. And Richard Roberts got on the phone, and he was an attorney. And after I started to tell him the story and what research I'd looked for, he cut me off and said, hey, send me everything you have, because we may be able to do something, since it happened at a park. And that kicked off the 18-month federal investigation that resulted in the conviction of Raymond Bledsoe for only the fourth time in American history under the Civil Rights Act of 1968. And he's still in prison and is now the longest serving inmate for a racial crime in the United States, having been denied his 30-year parole, mandatory parole last year.
Wow, that's amazing. And also, what would you consider your greatest accomplishment? Right there, that would be enough for most people. Right there, to bring the killer of this prominent and up and coming musician to justice. Because, like, one thing about Kansas City, if you don't understand, Kansas City is a music mecca. I'm in Memphis, but I know everybody know Kansas. I mean, y'all produce some of the greatest musicians of the 20th century. Charlie Parker, so many of them. But what would you say is your greatest accomplishment as a social justice advocate and crusader? And do you like the term crusader? Are you okay when people call you a crusader? Is that okay for you?
Yeah, because I understand that yeah, I do, and I consider myself when I pursue cases in a similar metaphoric way, because I say I'm a long distance runner for justice, not a short distance sprinter, and so you don't see me rushing in and rushing out. I'm there when it takes a long effort to overturn injustice, and I pace myself. So that's why you don't see a lot at the front or in my involvement, but you see it toward the end. So, but it would be hard to say, because so much of it that has happened in my life has been from a personal perspective. Yes, the Steve Harvey case would be my signature case. That's the case that people would look at and say, that's when the national circles started to take me serious and in that type of thing, and having that kind of understanding. But all of my cases are educational or spiritual victories, and so there's a broader circle that I look at in terms of what was most significant and what was most important. For instance, and a lot of people don't know, and they'll know when I do my book, that what I consider personally the most important case to me happened right before Steve Harvey's case. That involved a murder of a not so well-known musician who happened to be a friend of mine in the course of our relationship. He started an affair with my woman, and it ended up in a breakup of the relationship, and then he ended up being killed a year later, and I still took the case, and when they couldn't find who did it, and pursued the case, and the guy got convicted for murdering him. Well, for other people, because that's not a civil rights type of case, or something of a real historical nature, they may have a different measuring stick than I do. To me, that was most important, because it went to my character. And that wasn't one I really would have wanted to do, given what had happened. It was easy for Steve Harvey's case, in the sense of the pursuit to pursue his case. And it wasn't in this other, and that was more important in terms for me. So in that area, now you have over the course of my life, Emmett Till's case had a very important impact in terms of the case development in what that case has done impact-wise on my life. But other than that, and of course, the Emmett Till Unsolved Civil Rights Crime Act, those are things that are achievements that occurred along the way. But in terms of measuring them by what is important or more important, or what I see as the biggest, like I said earlier, and I meant that seriously, the most important legacy I haven't even achieved yet, and that's down the road. And people around the world will remember me more for that than they will for the things that people in America remember me up to for now.
Like in the biblical sense, a prophet is always without honor. You know how that goes in their hometown or country, among friends and relatives. But also, it's the Steve Harvey case is so, I believe, it plays a pivotal role in your journey because of the connection to Emmett Till. Can you explain that connection to Emmett Till, Steve Harvey?
Yeah, Rhea Harvey, Steve Harvey's widow. When I was pursuing Steve's case, she kept saying this was the second hate crime in our family. And in the family tree of her family, not in the family tree of Steve Harvey's family, but in her family tree were relatives of Emmett Till. So when I seen that article, in 2002 in the Call paper that was talking about Emmett Till's mother had been trying to get the case reopened since '56, and on the federal level, had been trying, and that there was two filmmakers, Keith Beauchamp and Stanley Nelson, had done 2 films and felt that they had evidence that needed to that could justify an investigation. When I seen that popped to my mind about what she had said about Emmett Till, and then of course another case that I'd worked on where the name had come up, but it was after seeing that article that me and Don Berger made the commitment to go and meet Emmett Till's mother after I reached out to her and Reverend Wheeler Parker, and we went to Detroit and met with her and told her what we had done and told her about the connection of the family. Her nephew confirmed it from while we were there in the meeting about the relationship to her relatives' family, and then when she agreed to go forward with the creating of the Emmett Till Justice Campaign, and then unfortunately 7 days later, you're on the verge of having the first conversation with the State Attorney General in Mississippi that we had arranged for that day, she passed. And so we looked at that moment as being that she had lived long enough to pass the torch on to us to go forward and as much as possible find out the truth, and if possible secure any justice on her son's behalf. And that's what we did from the Emmett Till, from the creation of the Emmett Till Justice Campaign, and moving forward in the 2 areas of the individual case and then the movement toward the cases collectively under the Emmett Till Unsolved Civil Rights Crime Act.
Oh wow, that's amazing. I mean, like your resume is fascinating. I mean, like you got like I said, like it was no small claim to make that y'all one of the finest legal minds in this country right now when it comes to civil rights litigation and things of that nature. I want to actually just because now, I mean, the Emmett Till bill was signed into a law back in 2008, correct? Was it 2008?
Right, 2008. And what I want to do say is, when you said that about that, it gave me a flashback to when Martin Luther King III was introducing me to someone, and he said, "Well, this is Alvin Sykes." But he says he's not an attorney, but I don't believe it. He just got too much knowledge. And that was
right.
Yeah, but yeah, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut into that, but yeah, you made me think about that. Now, what were you saying?
Yeah, I want to ask, in hindsight, the bill. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was asking you, in hindsight, with the passing of the bill, and we have. You think that the bill has been used to its best effect? You think has it been effective in doing the things that were stated for its existence in the first place?
No, and that's in 2 ways. I mean, one was there never was a manhunt. In developing the bill, it was conceived on the point that there had to be an aggressive manhunt for witnesses and names, that people that were involved in this, either by way of being victims or family of victims, or perpetrators or families of perpetrators, but primarily the families of the victims, they were going to leave the South. And they left during the Great Migrations. We said in the development of the Till bill that there would have to be an aggressive outreach throughout the South, not just throughout the North, through the north, where people migrated from the south to the north to find those relatives, and that you would have to make that proactive effort, because these are the people that still have the memories, why they don't want to be trusting no federal agents or law enforcement. And you have to be showing that you really need it, that you really are going to do that. And by going through and having those community forums and outreach, I felt that we would have a better chance of getting actual cases that with witnesses and evidence. And the second thing was the scope of the TIL bill, where it had to be, which wasn't our doing, but that's what it took in terms of getting it through, was that the case had to be murdered. Excuse me, it had to be racially motivated. Well, that's very difficult to prove, even when it happens in current times with present evidence, to have that kind of hurdle to deal with. And back during that period, that would mean that a lot of cases under review would simply get rejected before, because there wasn't evidence of racial motivation, before they would even deal with the issue of the merits of it. And since most of the most of the perpetrators back then were law enforcement and local law enforcement, we felt and see clearly in hindsight that it should have been racially motivated in under color of law cases, because some of those cases that they rejected under the racial lack of racial motivation evidence could have been sustained because it was involving deputy sheriffs in different law enforcement, where you don't have to have the burden of racial motivation. And then the timing of when the case would when the TIL bill would end, and the cases being 69 being as far as it could go. So no, it didn't do as much as it could have did. It did do those things in terms of solving cases that, even though they couldn't be prosecuted, people got to know what actually happened in their case. And we're looking at the groundwork of developing the TIL Bill 2 that will deal with those deficiencies in TIL Bill 1, make it a more permanent structure within the Civil Rights Division, so that it can cover all the way up to now, and that there be a permanent cold case structure within the investigative infrastructure on civil rights cases, and go from there. And so that's what I've been working on, researching and trying to develop the means for TIL Bill 2 and see where that takes us.
You know, I also was thinking of TIL Bill. I was thinking about, was it succeeding or failing? And you laid out some great, reasons why it's not working and how it could be improved. But I know I told you right before your lecture or talk last month at the Kansas City Public Library, I told you that I found out recently that Olin Burridge, the guy who sworn to chain and gun, their bodies were discovered on his property, he passed away back in March of last year, and he never spent a day in jail for what he did or his alleged involvement in the sworn and chain and gun murders. And how do you feel about that when you had this bill made for people to be pursued like him, and they never see justice?
Well, I have two feelings on that. One is a sense of disappointment, but one is not. Because the one that's not is the fact of the matter is, before there was any effort, those people continued to live their lives at ease. They had nothing to worry about. They didn't just do, and they didn't have to worry about getting prosecuted. They didn't have to sweat. They just went on and did what they did. And if you look at how we were in the acts of terrorism, in what occurred back during that period of time, when they lynched one black, their greatest accomplishment was to put the fear in the rest of them. And in that sense, we looked at the Till bill, knowing that as late into the game that we were coming into this with this resources, and that it may not accomplish what we set out to do. But in the words of Merle Evers, who testified at the Till bill hearing before Congress, said while we were there, if it doesn't do anything, go any further than out of that room where the hearing was held, that it would be an accomplishment, because it would show to the people that have gone through this that somebody did care, and that there was an effort as best as could be done. And in the sense of what I say, those folks, even the ones that died, they went to their grave in fear of the next knock on the door being for them. They didn't get to just go and just let life go on. They had a sense of fear until they passed away. That may be a consolation to some. It may be a cop-out to others. But from the standpoint of what we set as our goals in terms of establishing the bill, and I can't speak for all those that came on board at various parts of it and their motivation, but ours was to pursue truth and, if possible, attain justice. And so in that sense, yes, I was disappointed when people like him and others did die without being brought before the bar of justice. But on the other hand, I'm glad that they did. They went sweating and didn't go out easy.
Amen to that. I'm actually speaking of like fear of. Do you ever have a fear of death, like in terms of death threats? Have you ever received death threats from the work you're doing? Because it's very courageous what you're doing. It might not seem courageous to you because that's who you are, that's your character. But to a lot of folks, I mean, you're taking some bold stances against a system, against, and you're doing things that they're shaking up the status quo, so to speak. Have you ever been in fear for your life or for the lives of your loved ones?
Yes, I've been in fear of my life, but however, and I hope you understand, I've made it a policy and a practice not to discuss security issues, because while there may be a lot of people who may want to be very positive, it may be that one or so that hears something in my response that would help make it easier for them. And I don't want to make it easy for them at all. So my only response is yes, I've had fear. And yes, I believe I got a strategy, spiritual base and other that keeps me going and protects me.
I heard that. And also, I guess I want to ask you, like, a quote. I can't let you get off of this era without asking you your thoughts about the Michael Dunn verdict from yesterday.
Well, I can't, since I didn't focus in terms on it. It wouldn't. I don't have an opinion per se. I started to look into, to monitor it from the standpoint to see if this is something that may have further action that can be taken in it. And because of that and the prospect that it came, it's not good for me to speak on it now, because I never know at what point that I may need or become involved in the matter, the potential like that. And so I'm monitoring it, and I'm looking at it from the standpoint of where it goes from here, and whether justice has been served, and is there opportunity, if not for greater opportunity for justice, and that's when I'd be speaking.
And I guess one more. I guess it's two questions. Who has been your most surprising supporter?
My most surprising supporter. I mean, I guess it depends on how. If it's surprising to me, or it's a surprising to other. I mean, Herbie Hancock by far is my most strongest best friend supporter. And for those that know me and you know him, that is not as surprising. But if you speak in terms of someone who someone would never think that would be a supporter, and who has become a supporter, that range goes from people like Crosby Kemper. They're at the third at the library. People don't know really a lot of significance part of that event, but Crosby Kemper III comes from a very powerful and financial family in the state, and his family owns the two biggest banks in the state of Missouri and in Kansas, the United Missouri Bank and Commerce Bank. And Crosby Kemper III was the head of the United Missouri Bank, and because of his love of reading, and wanting to do something more meaningful in his life, he wanted to leave the financial world and come to the library world, and became the executive director. They even had to change the state law to allow him to become the director because he didn't have a librarian degree. But what he did have was 23,000 books in his own personal library, that and his love for reading. So that was something who people did not think would end up being an ally of mine. And certainly the one that Senator Coburn, who is the one that would fit most in the unlikely category of being a supporter. He was the one that initially put a hold on the Till bill, and then after our communication and worked back and forth, he became a champion of the bill and withdrew his hold, and that's how it ended up becoming passed by unanimous consent.
Mm-hmm.
So,
oh wow! I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, so now I could be coming up with all kind of other ones, in terms of along the line. I've been active with every last Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights in the Department of Justice since I was 18, and since Drew Days, who was the first black one, up to the current one, who I'll meet, the one that's just getting voted in, but up to now, and that has been unlikely, as well as Attorney Generals like Ed Meese and Eric Holder. So it's always been a variety, and so a lot of the surprise comes because of how other people see it as being surprising. But for me, especially with my Buddhist faith and our deep belief in the power of dialogue, I'm just not afraid to reach out and communicate with anybody. And there's been times where I've stood up in court cases on the side of the Klan trying to get on public access channel, even though I beat them in all the other areas all the rest of the time. So pursue the truth and justice. I go whichever way that goes. And in the course of 40 years, there's been many unlikely ones, because my overall strategy is I hold whoever's in office accountable. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm independent, and I'm a statesman as it relates to in my political involvement. Is from the perspective of what's best for the next generation, as opposed to a political one as to what's best for the next election. And so, in going that route, there's a whole lot of unlikely ones, because I'll work with practically anyone who will work effectively and realistically with me.
Well, Brother Sykes, I want to thank you once again. That's a great way to end the show. You are truly a national treasure and beyond category, in the words of great due diligence. We love you madly, man. We want to support you and keep on letting you know about your great work, and also your great faith and the great example you have set for us, as well as for generations to come. And I also want to thank my co-host, Dr. Leah, as well, for participating in the first segment, and also our other guest, Sister Dawn Porter and Sister Margaret Block. And I had one more question. I just want to know who's been the most interesting person you ever met in your life. I kind of think I know.
Who's been the most interesting person? What?
You met in your lifetime. You have met in your lifetime.
The most interesting one, I would say, is who in my heart that I adopted as my daughter, Kenya, and her brother, Marcus. And I started to put that in the other category that you asked in terms of my most significant accomplishment. But to come into their lives early on and adopt them in my heart, and them to adopt me in their heart as as their dad, that's been the most rewarding relationship and accomplishment for me. And now that I got between those two 6 grandkids, grandsons, all boys.
Wow.
You know, this is where I want to be moving more toward in this phase of my life, because the joy that I got, particularly with Kenya and some of her activities at school, going in parent-teachers conferences and cheerleading games and all, it was a joy, much of a joy that I felt that I could have as a man. Couldn't understand after I went through that experience why nobody wouldn't want to go to their kids' games and support them. That's been the most for me, outside of those that I've already mentioned as it relates to Herbie Hancock, who, beyond the physical part of my natural mother and natural father's contribution, and it would certainly, and Bernetta Page, it would be Herbie Hancock after that, who's had the most positive impact in my life with introducing me to this Buddhist practice and staying in my life for all 40 years. And that's
Bye.